have searched many years on end. There was none that my soul could depend. My soul cries out for your presence in here. This very hour, for your presence in here. In His name I find, in His name I find, in His name I find the peace I seek. In His name I find, in His name I find, in His name I find the joy I seek. I have searched many years on end. There was none that my soul could depend. My soul cries out for your presence in here. This very hour, for your presence in here. In His name I find, in His name I find, in His name I find the peace I seek. In His name I find, in His name I find, in His name I find the joy I seek. In your presence I am free from the chain that has bound me. In your presence I am calm, waiting for the kingdom come. In your presence I am free from the chain that has bound me. In your presence I am calm, waiting for the kingdom come. In His name I find, in His name I find, in His name I find the peace I seek. In His name I find, in His name I find, in His name I find the joy I seek.
Let us take this time to meditate and ponder upon the words of God from the book of Mark. Mark chapter 4 verses 35 to 40. Let me read for all of us. Mark chapter 4 verses 35 to 40. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, They took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" This is the living word of God. The crises of life have often been compared to stormy seas. They come upon us whether we like it or not. They terrify us. They knock us around and threaten to destroy all our stability and security. We don't know whether we can survive them, and we don't know how long they will last. At least, that's how a storm at sea would be for most of us. The book of Mark follows the parables with a series of miracle stories on and around the Sea of Galilee. And here it emphasizes the extraordinary character of Jesus' power as he subdued the raging sea. Here the passage tries to show that Jesus even has the power not only over demons and death, but also over nature. Here the passage tried to show with reference to the deficient faith of persons who was to be his believers, either the disciples or people who had known Jesus all his life. The very first phrases on that day when the evening come enable us to understand the context of these passages. In these passages, we can see that after the time of teaching, when the evening came, the disciples and Jesus got into the boat that Jesus had been teaching from and headed to the other side of Galilee as directed by Jesus. It is obvious that he was tired after teaching and ministering to the crowd, following him, clamoring and needing him. So he crawled into the boat and fell asleep. It was apparently a very deep sleep. While they were out on the boat, a squall blew up. Violent storm rose up out of the blue with a shattering and terrifying sudden, and the waves was so strong that they were breaking over the boat of the boat. However, the sleep of Jesus was not bothered by the storm. Indeed, it was clear that Jesus was sleeping because of his faith. He was not worried about the storm, but resting in God the Father. However, the disciples proclaimed his faith of Jesus as lack of concern for them. So they awakened him and rebuked him for his unconcern. So Jesus, the creator of the universe, told the wind to pipe down and say to the sea, "Peace, be still." In other version, "Quiet, be muzzled." Thus it is stopped. The wind ran out of the breath. The sea became smooth as glass. So everything became calm, and it must have been as peaceful as Jesus' rest had been before. In the meantime, Jesus rebuked and spoke severely to his disciples because of their lack of faith, saying, "Why are you such cowards? Don't you have faith at all?" The first words of Jesus were directed to the raging storm, "Peace, be still." Of course, it might also have aimed those words at his faithless followers. Anyway, let us think once again. Since Jesus had told them to go to the other side of the lake, did they not believe that he had the power to see them safely across the water? Instead, they were terrified. They feared a great fear. However, a moment before they feared for their lives, they had been delivered by the one who was stronger than the waves. Of course, the miracle of his authority over nature must have left them stunned and slack-jawed. His savage speech surely made them feel small, and it is clear that he was telling them that they could exercise this same power if they only had faith. As we read, we come to know that Jesus and his disciples are crossing the Sea of Galilee. They are moving from the side that they are at home to the side where they were strangers, the side where life is familiar to the side where it is new, different, and unfamiliar. We may have never crossed the Sea of Galilee, but we have been in that boat. For this is not just a story of weather and a boat trip. Rather, it is a story about life. It's about faith and fear. Sometimes the sea of life is rough. The wind is strong. The waves are high. The boat is taking on water and sinking. We all know what that is like, and I'm sure each of us has a strong story and we could tell of it. Some of our stories will begin with a phone call or news that we do not want to hear. Some will tell about the difficulty of the relationships, hopes, and plans that fell apart, or the struggle to grow up and find our ways. Some storms seem to arise out of nowhere and take us by surprise. Storms happen. Storms of loss and sorrows, storms of pain and suffering, storms of confusion, failure, disappointment, regret, depression, uncertainty, storms of different problems, storms of unwanted treatment from the context. Moreover, storms happen when we are not in a position to accomplish our given task. Storms are not something which happened once. It is something which still happens and which can happen for us. The disciples are quick to make the storm about Jesus. Do you not care that we are perishing? Or don't you care if we drown? Probably we all have that echoed in every storms of our life. Sometimes Jesus seems absent, passive, uncaring. And I'm sure if we are also in the position of the disciples, there will be a question, how can he sleep at a time like this? Because sleeping Jesus is not that what they want or what we want. However, sleeping Jesus was also in the same boat and in the same storm as the disciples. He was surrounded by the same water as the disciples, blown by the same wind, beaten by the same waves. Yet while disciples fret and worry, he sleep in peace and stillness, which reveals that the greatest storm and the real threat is not the wind, the waves, and the water around us, but within us. That very interior storm is the one that blows us off, beats against our faith, and threatens to drown us. When Jesus speaks to the wind and the sea, peace be still, Jesus isn't changing the weather as much as inviting the disciples to change. He is speaking to the wind and the waves within them. Jesus' words are more about than the circumstances of our life, the storms we meet. When we look into our life, we often act like the disciples who forgot the presence of Jesus in the boat, and even the power of Jesus in the time of storm. But when the storm comes, they start screaming, searching for him, and shouting at him, aren't we? In our life, when we are okay or when we are good, we fail to realize the presence of God in us. We fail to put our faith in God in every aspect of our life. But when the storms and waves strikes into our life, with different problems in different ways, only then we screamed and shouted at Jesus and complained with a big question, why? When we face difficulties and problems mentally, psychologically, physically, financially with different incidents, wasn't it force us to pray more and put our faith to God? Do you think God is different when we are okay and when we are in the midst of the storm? No, never. God is always the same. Then why can't we put our prayer in faith even when we are okay, in the form of thanking God for his protection, for his blessing, for his love, and many more in our life, but not only in the time of storms. Sometimes life's problem involves us in a tempest of doubt and tension and uncertainty. Their times come when we do not know what to do, when we stand at some crossroad in life and do not know which way to take, when we face financial problem with different situation. If then, why don't we turn to Jesus and say to him, Lord, what will you have me to do? Then I'm sure the way will be clear for us. Because the real tragedy is not that we do not know what to do, but it is that we do not humbly submit to Jesus' guidance. So to ask his will and to submit to it is the way to peace at such point of time. Moreover, he gives peace in storms of anxiety. Here I want to say that the chief enemy of peace is worry, anxiety. Worry for ourselves, worry about the future unknown, worry about the situation, worry about those we love, worry about what to do. But Jesus speaks to us of a Father whose hand will never cease his child a needless tear, and of love beyond which neither we nor those we love can ever drift. In the time of storm of anxiety, he brings us the peace of the love of God when we really put our anxiety to God. God is always there for us even in time of storms. The peace of God is always present. It is only because of a lack of faith and fail to realize the presence of the peace of God in us. Therefore, I want to remind all of us once again that to voyage with God was to voyage in peace even in the wildest storm of lives. The Spirit of God blows through and within us more mightily than the winds of any storm. The power of God is stronger than any waves that beats against us. The love of God is deeper than any water that threatened to drown us. In every storm, Jesus is present and his response is always the same: peace, be still. In every storm, there are choices to be made. Will we terrorize the storm or Jesus' peace? Do we put our faith in the power of the storm or in the power of God in Christ? Lest we be critical of the disciples, let us admit that we are much like them. When one of life's storms overwhelms us, we often panic. Instead of confronting the situation in the power and the wisdom of God mightily, we run around screaming, "Why are we such cowards? Why do we not believe? Why is our faith so small?" Jesus tells us in the storms around us, "Peace, be still, quiet, settle down." Dear believers, taking this moment, I would like to say that no matter what happens or what storm comes in life, if we put our trust, our hope, and our faith like Jesus to his Father, then there will be victory of every storm of our life, because God will let us to overcome it. So as we live our life in the middle of the crisis and in the middle of sudden thunderstorm, let us hear his word and trust, and put our faith to the one who can command the storm to cease. May the good Lord bless and continue to protect us from the wildest storms of our life. May the peace of God be with you all.